First email is from a parent, a mother, actually, about a child. But if you listen, you'll hear that it's about you and your childhood, either the childhood you had or the childhood you wished you'd had. Uh, I'm only saying that because somebody wrote, I don't remember when, some time ago, that there were too many video chat vignettes about children. I discovered after going through several hundred of them, that questions about children are actually considerably underrepresented considering the number of parents in the world. And whether it's about a child or not, there's something there for you about your past or your present, unless, of course, you were never a child, in which case, yes, there are too many. This mother writes, Timmy loves to vacuum. He will sometimes pull out the vacuum cleaner and vacuum without the sound, so without it being plugged into electricity, all over the house on his own. So this is a full-size vacuum, and you've seen kids do this. It's about all they can do to roll this thing around, and of course they bang it into refrigerators and everything else. So this one time my husband Jack was vacuuming with the sound, with it plugged in. It would look a little silly, I suppose, if you weren't. And Timmy really wanted to help. So at one point, Jack got too far from the plug and he couldn't reach a corner. The cord was too short. So Timmy pulled at the cord and unplugged it. And Jack turned around and had this impatient look on his face. I was right there, and I saw Timmy's face change immediately and become pained and sad, and he started crying quietly. Now, this is no yelling, no hitting, no throwing the child out the second-story window. I don't remember where I told it, so if it's a repeat, well, too bad. I have one distinct memory of my grandmother. I visited her 4 or 5 times, maybe 5 or 6, in all my life. She lived in Idaho. We lived in the East or the Midwest, and that was before interstates and common plane flight. That nobody could afford to fly unless you were, one of the rich people. We were not. And she was pleasant. She didn't talk much, but on one occasion I was swinging on a tire swing on a plum tree. Plum trees are not all that strong, and at age 10, I didn't know that. I figured if there was a tire hanging from a limb, then it was meant to be swung on. And it turned out that I swung on it pretty high, and as I swung down on a particular arc, I snapped off the limb of the tree, and which eliminated about a quarter of the tree. My grandmother came out, and my most prominent memory was that she just looked at me with disappointment. I had hurt her tree. I was 10. I didn't mean to hurt her tree, but the disappointment was crushing to me, just as crushing at 10 as to Timmy here, who was vacuuming and unplugged the vacuum at age 2. It's that destructive. The mother says, I sat down next to him and I hugged him and I said, I know you just wanted to help, right? That was kind of you. And my husband Jack came over and he said the same thing, not annoyed anymore after seeing the expression on Timmy's face. If it had been me, I would have admitted, if I'd been my husband, I would have admitted that I had been wrong to get annoyed. But since it was Jack's mistake, not mine, I didn't say anything. And I definitely didn't tell Jack because he would have hated to be corrected like that, especially in front of Timmy. Now that I think of it, I might bring that incident up with him later and ask him to consider admitting his mistake to Timmy next time that something like this happens. Do you think I can do that? Yeah, I think you can. In fact, I think it would be a really good idea since I know Jack. He really has a problem with being right. Really has difficulty admitting that he's wrong, even with a 2-year-old. And he needs to learn to be wrong with his 2-year-old son, or listen to me carefully, or he will guarantee future battles with Timmy. This is where the troubles start, right now. When the kid is 14, it's usually too late. I just spent a significant portion of my day, yesterday and today, in court first yesterday, and in jail today with a kid, Timmy, who, when he was 2 years old and pulled the cord out of the wall, got yelled at, not beaten, no, just got lots of looks of disappointment and disapproval, and you shouldn't have done that, and why did you do that, and why are you wearing that? And now he's 35 and a drug addict and an alcoholic and has a child of his own that he very likely won't see for the next several years because his parents told him that he needed to admit that he was wrong, but they never admitted to the kid that they were wrong and still haven't to this day. So I get to sit in this kid who is now 35. I got to sit in his prison cell because his parents didn't sit down with him on the floor 33 years ago and say these magic words, I was wrong. Had they done that, I would not have spent yesterday in court testifying on his behalf. I would not have had to call the prison last night to make sure he got his medication. I would not have had to spend a significant part of the day in his cell today. And he wouldn't have wasted pretty much 35 years of his life, depending, of course, on whether he learns anything from his experiences to this point. He was destroyed by parents not admitting they were wrong. I'm not kidding. No exaggeration at all. Timmy, without a parent who admits they're wrong, will turn into this 35-year-old prisoner. That's how it happens. The mother says, I might tell him about my own experience of admitting my mistakes to Timmy, meaning telling her husband, and how relieved he gets, the 2-year-old, how good it feels to admit to your kid that you're wrong and that you made a mistake. I know he didn't ask for my opinion, but it's for Timmy's sake too. If Jack can learn to say, oh, sorry, Timmy, that was Daddy's mistake. I shouldn't have gotten annoyed like that. That was wrong. It would mean so much to Timmy. Oh, honey, that's a vast understatement. This is critical for Jack and for Timmy. If Jack doesn't learn this now, Timmy is certain to become more aware of how his father is intimidating him with his rightness, like the father of the 35-year-old I visited in prison, as well as he'll become more aware of his father's hypocrisy, that his father requires Timmy to admit that he's wrong, but Jack doesn't. With all that, they're going to have increasing fights as Timmy gets older. And this 35-year-old kid and his now elderly father fight about pretty much sunrise. And it all started here. The mother says, 2 things help me to see Jack way clearer. He has a need to seem intellectually superior, and he hates to be analyzed. It's almost like everything he says boils down to one of these 2. Actually, you can boil them down to one. His need to be right. That is why he tries to be intellectually superior. That's why he hates to be analyzed, because both interfere with his being right. In truth, it would be more accurate to say that he hates to be wrong. He hates to be wrong more than he needs to be right, because then he would be unworthy of love if he were wrong. He learned that as a child in the same way he's now teaching Timmy. So yeah, you do need to say something to Jack. Jack's terrified of being wrong and not being loved. And just to be noted, he hates to be analyzed, but he loves analyzing everybody else. Just something for you to be aware of. The time might come, and you'll know when the time arrives, when Jack will hear this from you. The time might come when you'll have to teach, if Jack won't hear it, that you'll have to teach Timmy about what Jack is doing when he has a need to be right. But it can't go on like this. unless you want to visit your kid in prison and discover that you can't visit him because he's under lockdown, which is what I discovered today, and that his bond is so high you can't get him out of prison. So easier when they're 2 than when they're 35. Make a note. Every once in a while I get a note from somebody who says, I don't like it that you laugh at people's questions or the things that they say on the video chats or their behavior. So why do I do it? Lots of reasons. The first one's kind of obvious. Our behavior when we don't feel unloved is hysterical. When we don't feel loved, we're unhappy, 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 and it's like continuing to hammer yourself in the head with a hammer and wondering why there's a pain in your head. Our behavior is that crazy. That's one reason that I do it. But the second one is deeper. And that is, until we can laugh about the foolishness of our behavior, we can't eliminate the shame of it. So when I laugh at people's questions, certainly not mocking them individually, I'm mocking all of us. We all do all this stuff in our own flavor, in our own way. And until we can laugh about it, what we tend to do is hide it. And then it never changes. Like the parents of this kid who I visited in prison today. They don't find anything funny about any of this. And they have absolutely no inclination to admit that they were ever wrong. So it would really help them to laugh. Here's somebody who wrote and said, I just had a brief but lovely talk with my younger sister. I called her once several months ago after learning about real love, and I found it very challenging. I could feel her emptiness, and I didn't know how to react. I was seeing her in a way that I'd never seen her before, and it was disorienting and sad to see her pain more clearly. It's kind of fun to wake up to life, isn't it? You see more about yourself, but you also see more of the pain of other people, and you'd like to help, and sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. You continue, but calling her today was different. I practiced listening with no aim or expectation. I tried listening just for the pleasure of hearing her speak. And it was so much fun. It was freeing and joyful, whereas in the past, I've always felt nervous with her. I've always needed her approval. This time I didn't need anything. What a difference the absence of fear and the power of really listening makes. So cool. It is huge. And I'm really tickled for you. With real love, we wake up. We're not blinded by emptiness and fear anymore. But we also see more pain. We see more of the pain in our own lives. We see the pain in the lives of the people around us. There was a lady here for a retreat weekend just the other day, and she said, I've never felt this happy. I've never felt this awake, this alive, this energized, this. And I said, well, I don't want to make you feel bad, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. Because the more you see, the more pain you see. 2 days later, she Skypes and says, I feel worse. Because she was looking around and seeing hers and everybody else's pain. All we have to do is persist. Persist in seeing, persist in learning, persist in growing, and it all gets better. As we grow, we feel fire to share what we know with people in pain. But we don't have a right to share what we know with people who aren't really ready for it. So initially, we just love people. And only when the opportunity presents itself, obviously, or we're asked, do we add to the loving teaching. Only then. New subject. Here's a guy who says, I get that my wife feels my disappointment of fulfilled expectations deeply. I'm sure that she resents them and ultimately any affection from me because of my high expectations. I'm concerned that asking for anything also tells her that I'm not satisfied with whatever she's currently giving. I don't know where the line between wants and expectations is for her. Well, so pay attention, because I've answered this particular question with you on quite a number of occasions. So you're not hearing it because there's something about it you don't want to hear. So listen slow, or you can listen fast if you want, and then just listen again. You keep thinking that there's a line between wants and expectations. A lot of people do. It's not a line. It's the Grand Canyon. It's a huge gap. Hear this? It's all about your disappointment, period. Or as the Brits would say, full stop. That's it. Disappointment. And you ooze disappointment. When you talk to her about your expectations, you have disappointment just dripping out of your ears. You ooze, I need, I need, I need, I need. You just pound her with those words. You convince her of how much you need. You convince her of why she should give you what you need. It just drips out of you. And then you're disappointed when your gaping needs are not met. Then you tell me that you understand the effect of your disappointment on your wife, but you're not even close. Impossible. Because then you talk about walking a fine line, which shows that you don't have an understanding of the effect that your disappointment has on her. Your disappointment is crushing. And until you get this, everything else pretty much means nothing. You can't see the difference because you tend to say it like this. You say, I, with a 150 font, want, with a font of 8. Then you say, I, 150 font, expect, and then you hope that if you say expect small, that it will be small. It's the word I that you focus on. You're always talking about I want, I need, your focus is on you. And boy, can she tell. You pretty much never thank her for things she does. You pretty much never ask her what she would like. Actually, I've been in the room when you've asked her what she'd like, and it was almost comical. You didn't mean to, but you asked her what she'd like so that she would then ask you what you wanted. It was pretty obvious. We can only have wants and make requests when we already have what matters most, when we feel loved. You would have to get unconditional love from somebody other than her because she already feels wrung out like an old rag. Without what we need, the love we need, we're in pain and desperate, and then everything becomes a demand with expectations because we're in pain. And when we're in pain, pain trumps everything. Pain brings the room to a standstill. Pain requires that everybody pay attention to us. So if you can pay attention to that, focusing on her, focusing on noticing your disappointment, you'll begin to understand the difference between your wants and your expectations, because the difference is huge. I know a man who is extraordinarily selfish in his relationship with his wife, and, well, frankly, extraordinarily selfish everywhere. It's pretty uncommon for somebody to be selfish in one place. Just like if a pig wanders from room to room to room, it turns out it's a pig in every room it goes to. And so he's selfish and angry and right. He asked me what he could do about it. And I said, I would suggest, if you want to keep it really simple, just 2 things: fewer words and be wrong. Now, why would I make it that simple? Because when we're trying to be right, you can write it down virtually as a law. The more words we use to ask for something or to tell somebody they made a mistake, the more we want to be right. Fewer words, less need to be right. And be wrong. Say, here's the mistake I made in asking. I got angry. I was selfish. Again, why? Because it's pretty tough to be right while you're admitting that you're wrong. So I kept it really simple for him. Fewer words, be wrong. Done. Forget all the books. Remember that. So he began the process. He actually went into the next room that day and told his family that he was wrong about whatever. They were stunned. They wondered who had broken into their home and who was impersonating their father, because that's not something that he normally does. And he actually was doing pretty well. But by then, she had lived with his being right and using too many words for, 20 something years. And she had learned to act like a victim in response to his being right. Oh, what a tragic combination. So he wrote this. He said, I'm changing, but just not fast enough. Oh, the potency of what he just wrote. And I wrote back, that's probably the smartest thing you've ever said. You are changing. You really are. In the past, you said you were changing. You weren't. You really are. And you're right. It's not fast enough. The biggest thing is stopping entirely the hurting, the anger, the being right. You'll spend the rest of your life learning to be loving. We all do. But the injuries have to stop right now. It doesn't matter how nice I am to Donna all day long. If, just once a day, it's after all only once. I hit her in the face with a shovel. It turns out that at the end of the day, she doesn't say, gee, thanks for being nice to me. It doesn't even close to average out. And that's what you do. You're doing way better at being wrong. You're using fewer words, but every once in a while you just bring out a gun and you're right and use too many words and you just re-inflict the injuries. The injuries have to stop. And I'm describing everybody. I'm describing me. It was hard for me to learn this. I would reason that I was learning to be so much more loving. So then if I'm being more loving, then surely, occasionally, I get to be ugly just a little bit. Right? Wrong. I had to stop all unloving behaviors. Well, that's just not reasonable. It's not fair. How could she possibly expect me to just stop them? Because learning to be loving is difficult, and it's acceptable to learn that all your life. But stopping punching somebody in the face, that's doable. Just like stopping cocaine, just like stopping anger, just like stopping being right. And you can stop them right now because they're really quite visible. They're quite obvious. It's not subtle when you get snotty and angry and critical towards your partner. Now, you're not bad for doing this. You're actually doing better. You're right about that. You're just stuck in old patterns. You can do this. He continues. In reality, the only reason that I'm changing at all is because of her determination to help both of us, and she deserves enormous credit for doing this. On my own, I'm almost certain I wouldn't have addressed these issues. So I would suggest you go read this email to her. He had previously sent another one that was similar to this, and I suggested he go read that one. Read it to her so that she can read that you said to me, I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for her. She doesn't hear nearly enough appreciation or gratitude for her. It will matter. Watch her face. He did it. He did take the 2 emails to her and read them to her, and it did make a difference. She made the independent decision to give up her victimhood. Now, they make mistakes, but they stand a chance. I was telling a coach earlier today who said, I'm going to do my first intervention with a couple. What do you recommend? Well, loving takes a lifetime, but the hitting in the face with a shovel has to stop right now. And that's why I suggest that in any relationship, not just husband, wife, lovers, but parent, child, workplace, everywhere, that we eliminate the sources of destruction. So we commit to no fear, no anger, no confusion, and no past. Now, we've talked about this before, so I'm only going to mention it briefly. When I say no fear, I don't mean you're not allowed to be afraid. No, that's going to happen, and it's not going to do any good to just go, okay, I'm not going to be. Well, you probably will. It means no fear that you don't address. So if you become afraid with your partner, either try talking to your partner, it might work, or talk to a wise person who will help you become unafraid. No more destruction. New subject, oddly, about a child again. Maybe I'll prove to be wrong. Who knows? If so, then I'll just say I was wrong. Would you be willing to offer some advice to our 9-year-old daughter, Lily, on the video chat? Well, I wrote back maybe, but here we are. The father says, I can see a huge difference in her over the past couple of years. I can see that she can feel and trust our love more and more. And let me tell you, this has been a long process. This has been hundreds of emails and hundreds of suggestions before both parents have gotten more on the same page and not been unloving to this child to the point where the only thing left to her was terrible behaviors. He continues, at home, she doesn't need to use her protecting behaviors, and we've been teaching her so she manipulates and acts up a lot less. It's a joy to watch her begin to blossom. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, this is exciting. This is the opposite of the 2-year-old that we were talking about earlier. This is the opposite of the 35-year-old that I spent part of the day with in jail. This is how you prevent these things. Let me tell you, from extensive experience of working with people in prisons, it is much easier to keep a kid out of prison than to deal with the problems that happen once they're in there. You don't even want to start down that road, because once they get going fast enough, poof, they're in a cell and you're wondering what to do. And by then it's too late. He continues. At school, she's faced with a different environment where people don't play by our real love rules. Yeah, no kidding. This weekend, for example, a friend of hers, part of her gang, had a birthday party and did not invite her. I was surprised because the friend came to Lily's birthday party and they seemed to play together a lot. So, the typical little snotty thing that kids do when they're young, I'll come to your party, but I won't invite you to mine. It's just a little power thing they do. Today, when I dropped Lily off at school, I could tell she was feeling kind of small. And she came for an extra hug and wanted to see, some pictures of the puppies that we have in our house. Just for herself, to remind herself of something that she has that she loves. And I've been thinking about how to talk to her about her friends, to explain that it's about them, not her, and remind her why they often can't love her. Maybe I could help her to focus on what she does have and so on, but also about what she can do to find people who are more capable of loving her. In other words, continue to be truthful herself. I can see that she wants to be liked by her gang, and it's that desire that leads to her disappointment. I know I still have a tendency to lecture when I'm explaining this stuff, and that gets in the way of her really getting it. I'm working on that, but that's for another email. What can I say to her to get all this across to her? Better yet, would you be willing to say some words to her on the chat? Sure. So I'll address her directly. And I would encourage all the rest of us who are adults to listen, because most of us have not grown past 9. Most of us socially arrested at about 4 to maybe 6. The really mature ones of us are 6. That's a scary thought. The grown-ups in the world are 6. So Lily, who's 9, imagine a world where every time you made a mistake, they put you in jail. Really? Every time you screw up in any way, you go to jail. Every time you're unkind, jail. Or they use a machine to attach to your body that if you're about to do the wrong thing, they say electrocute you, for example. So they make you do the right thing. So they either make you do the right thing or they take you to jail if you do the wrong thing. Would you like either of those? You really wouldn't. I promise. Think about it. It would be hell. You think your parents are tough, but that's exactly what you want to have for your friends. You want them to behave in a kind and loving way toward you. You would like to control them, but you hate being controlled. So they get to choose their friends and how they treat them, even if it's unkind. They have to. You can't control people part of the time because where would it stop? You'd end up controlling them all the time and then they'd be puppets and we'd be back to putting people in jail or, electrocuting them. Do you want to live with puppets all your life? Not really, because then you'd be alone. So what's the solution? You don't want to be put in jail. We can see now that it's not going to work if you put them in jail. You don't want to be electrocuted. You don't want to electrocute them. That world would really suck. So what's the solution? Everybody has to have a choice about how they behave. We have to be able to choose. If we don't have the ability to make our own choices, then we become like sticks or rocks, useless. Your friend came to your birthday party. You chose to invite her. She chose to come. Does that mean that she should invite you to her birthday party? Oh, this is very tempting to answer yes, but the answer is no. There's no should. Let's suppose that your friend doesn't believe what we talked about. She does like to control people and how they respond to her. So what does she do? She collects people who cooperate with her game. In some way, you don't give her exactly the behavior she wants. You don't pay her off with the right behavior. So she doesn't invite you to her party, where she does make everybody a puppet and everybody does give her exactly what she wants. So the question is, do you really want to be a puppet? We already answered that. So why do people get to choose to be selfish and stupid? Like, frankly, your friend is being selfish and stupid. Yes, there's no denying that. Because the alternative, because the other way is worse. Which would be controlling everybody all the time. All you can ever do is be kind and loving yourself. Never be like the people who are hurtful and selfish. It's never happy. That's why. Is it fair that your friend gets to not invite you and you invite your friend, but you did invite your friend? Oh, maybe not. But the alternative again is worse. We have to be able to make our own choices. And you can always choose to be loving. Think about the times you've been loving toward your brother. I've heard about them, so I'm not guessing. You've been happier. You've smiled when you're kind to your brother. In fact, I watched you on a Skype call be kind to your brother and you smiled. Loving is always happy. Always. Even if some people don't like you and they're not loving in return. Always stay with loving, kid. It will always work better for you. Always works better for us adults, too. Well, looks like I may have to eat my words. It's about a kid again. Maybe I did this in revenge. I'm not quite sure now. This is somebody who writes and says, about my 2-year-old son, Mark. We often give him two choices of things: what he wants to wear, what cup he wants, or even things like, would you rather walk or me carry you, if he refuses to get inside or get changed or whatever. If he doesn't choose, we choose for him. Well, to my amusement, he has started to do the same thing with us. I was cutting up some apples for a snack for him, and he took two in his hands, and he went over to my husband and he said, Daddy, do you want the big one or do you want the small one? I think he feels like an adult when he does that. Yeah, it shows how well you've taught him about making a choice. And this is the part of the answer to the 9-year-old girl before this, Lily. We have to be able to make our choices. We're happier when we can. Kids hate to be controlled. When he feels like his life is being guided by principles, same with adults, he doesn't mind so much. And when he can do this with you, it's obvious that it's about principles, not just who is bigger, which is how most parents do things. You have to do it because I'm bigger than you and I can hit you harder than you hit me. Not quite so lovely. You continue. Oh, something else adorable he did today. He'd been playing in the backyard, but he needed to get his diaper changed. So we went inside, got the diaper changed, and then we were going to put our shoes back to go back outside. And he stopped at the shoe rack and looked at it and said, "My need to fix this," meaning I need to fix this. And I said, "Well, let's do that later when we get back inside." And he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, I need 1 minute to fix it." I can just see one of my grandchildren who would say it just like this. Now, it's very cool what Mom did here. What we tend to do is we order children around and we take choice from them when we don't have to do that. Children can't be happy if we control them all the time. So she said, okay. So he ran to his room and he picked up his toy screwdriver and he came back and he fixed, meaning what 2-year-olds do, they just rattle their little plastic screwdriver around. He fixed the shoe rack and then he ran back to his room with the screwdriver, put it away, which is better than I do in my tool shed, and came back to put his shoes on. And he said, all done. I love it that he's starting to express himself better because he says such fun things. And I feel like I'm getting to know him better. As much as possible, we have to listen to our children. And where possible, let them make their choice. The same with us as adults. And if you wonder why you have anger hidden in you, I talked to a lady this retreat weekend who, boy, it just nearly killed her to see how angry she is at the world. I thought she was going to break into pieces to admit that she was angry at the world and at God. But she's angry because her choices were all taken from her when she was a kid. So this little story about the kid and his screwdriver fixing the shoe rack isn't just about a kid. It's about us. Here's somebody who's said, I've been reading the PCSD book and I decided to list the judgments that I have, because we talk about event, judgment, feeling, reaction. So events occur. We then make a judgment about the event, usually about whether it will hurt us or fill our emptiness. Then after the judgment, there's an immediate feeling, which is caused by the judgment. And then following the feeling, we are motivated to behave or to react. So he says, I decided to list because the only thing we can change is the judgment. You can't change, things happen. You can't keep it from raining. You can't just change your feelings. You can't just say, well, I'm afraid, but I won't be. And it's pretty hard to just change our behaviors. I mean, every new year, how many hundreds of millions of people across the world resolve that they're going to control their anger. And that lasts for, 6 minutes of the New Year's Day. So he's decided to change his judgments. And he says, I decided to list the judgments I have that result in unhappiness and drama, and then list next to the judgment that has resulted in unhappiness, the judgment that would make things happier. I still have a few to go, but I wanted to know if I'm seeing things the right way. I think maybe I might be because I'm laughing at myself right now. I didn't intend to bring this back full circle, but earlier I talked about why I sometimes laugh at our behavior. Because once you can laugh at it, you're not ashamed of it anymore, and you don't hide it, and you're much more likely to talk about it and to change it. So he says, my old judgment, I feel empty inside, which leads to feelings of being victimy and hopeless and behaviors of giving up. True judgment, I'm unhappy because I'm believing a lie that there's no solution, when the truth is that there is a solution. All I have to do is change my judgment, and I can do something about it and change my whole life. My old judgment, there is no hope for me, so why try anymore? I've made so many mistakes. New judgment, I can't lose unless I quit. If you change the judgment to I can't lose unless I quit, well then what's the feeling from that judgment? Hope. And then what's the behavior that follows hope? Persistence. So see, he can change his whole life just by changing that one judgment. New judgment, old. The world is dangerous and frightening. Now, where would somebody get a judgment like that? Because all their life, the world has been dangerous and frightening. People don't make this stuff up. So all of his childhood, he was criticized and made fun of and yelled at and ignored. And so the world was dangerous and frightening, and people picked on him, and friends didn't play with him at school. And so, yeah, he formed the judgment that the world was dangerous and frightening, because then it was. We don't make this up. New judgment, formed as an adult, formed as a result of interacting with loving people. The new judgment is the world is a safe place. Now, he didn't just make this judgment because, well, it's the opposite of the other one. No, the world is a safe place because I believe in the 5 truths. Because I believe that there are people who love me, which proves that I'm worthwhile. I believe that God loves me, which proves that I'm worthwhile. When the creator of the whole universe cares about you, you couldn't be worthless. I'm not alone. I have everything that I could possibly need to be happy. So I'm grateful. Once you form that judgment and believe it, well, then what's the feeling? Joy, hope, peace, loving, loved. What are the behaviors? A long list of loving ones. Old judgment. My life doesn't mean anything, which would, of course, lead to despair and doing nothing, and justifiable from old experiences. New judgment. My life's purpose is to feel loved, be loving, and be responsible. Once you believe that, all you want to do is work to create this happiness. Old judgment. My future may be garbage. I may have no job, no partner, nobody cares about me. New judgment. My future is what I choose to make it. Happy or dramatic, my choice. Old judgment. I had a better spiritual life in the past. New judgment. I have faith that God loves me and is guiding me and teaching me how to apply real love in my life. So he has a lot more, and we may cover these in subsequent video chats, sort of do them in stages. But it's pretty obvious how completely this man's life can change and is changing as he's simply changing his judgments. What's changing his judgments? You don't just decide, my life is hopeful. My life is good. I have faith. My future is what I choose it. You acquire new judgments by having new events from people who care about you, from people who have no interest in hurting you, people who wouldn't lie to you. In other words, you acquire new judgments by dealing with people who tell the truth. Simple. And he's actually doing this. And we all have the ability to do this. I got an email from a mother this morning on the far side of the world. She has 4 little kids, and she got up in the morning and her kids started to misbehave, and she started to get tense and anxious and annoyed with them and yelling at them. And she realized, whoa, wait a minute. I'm judging that life is miserable, life is awful, and that my kids are tormenting me. She said, that's not the right judgment. That's not true. The truth is, I chose to bring these children into the world. The truth is, I have an opportunity with every word I speak, with every expression of my face and every tone of my voice and body posture. I have an opportunity to communicate to these children that I love them and to create a life for them that I never had. Instantly, she felt calmer and more caring and was kind to the boy who was throwing a fit, and just held him. And he became quiet, and he apologized for being unkind to his brother. The whole mood of the house changed because this one mother decided to change her judgment. Because this one mother made a wise choice. She's going to keep this 6-year-old from when he's 5 years old. She's going to keep him out of prison or out of divorce or out of hopelessness and despair or drug addiction or whatever, because she decided to change her judgment in that moment. Pretty cool. Pretty cool mom. I know a woman in real love who thought that her husband was a controller, and really resented it when he would suggest to her that she do things, like a certain way. And I said that he's really not a controller. I've heard you talk about him enough, and I've met him and I've talked to him, that he's not a controller. He likes to do things in an ordered way because he's a little OC, if things aren't in nice, neat little rows, he just can't function. I had a grandson who, when he was 1 year old, this isn't something you can learn at a year. He was born this way. At a year old, if a hamburger the bun was slightly askew from the meat, he would start screaming. And nobody knew what to do at first because nobody knew why he was screaming. So they would pat his head and hold his hand, and nothing made a difference until somehow somebody straightened up the bun and he stopped screaming. He needed his world in an orderly little pattern. He had to have his toys arranged in odd or even numbers. So before he could count, he's 1 year old. Before he could count, everything was 2, 4, 6, 8. Before he knew what 6 or 8 was, he just needed his world ordered. Since that time, his mother very wisely taught him that he doesn't really have to have that, and she's loved him, and he doesn't do that stuff anymore. But this woman's husband is like that. He just likes things just right. She always felt controlled, and really, he was trying to be loving. Crazily, he was trying to bring his ordered world into hers and make her happier, which wasn't working because she doesn't keep things ordered. So one day her husband invited her on a road trip to Gettysburg. She asked him what that was. Yeah, she had no idea. He got over rolling his eyes. Um, and he said, we will just go and have fun and we won't overschedule the trip. So she stopped what she was doing. She said, I'll be right back. And she sent me a text and she said, what did he mean by that? We won't overschedule a trip. What does that mean? I said, he's listening to your need not to be as regimented as his life is. You're hearing this? This is really big stuff. He's paying attention to you. He's modifying his need for orderliness for your happiness. She said, oh my gosh, I thought it was a bad thing because he was feeling like he was being forced to do it my way. No, no, no. He's listening because he's learning to love you. Conversations are almost always between people who are utterly deaf. Neither person really understands the other, and so they're constantly saying the wrong thing. They can't help it. She said, she wrote to me, she said, I need to notice that he's being loving to me to recognize my need not to be regimented. So maybe I can meet him in the middle. So if he tries not to be so regimented out of love for me, and I know he's trying, and I don't slam him for putting together a schedule, because apparently in the past he would, schedule their vacations down to, every 30 seconds. If I just understood him, I could just kind of like enjoy him. And maybe, now I don't want to go too far, she says, but maybe we could just like have a caring partnership. Yes, like that. She just needed to change her judgment that he was trying to control her because that's what her mother did do with her. So she figured that if somebody needs to be regimented, then they're controlling freak like her mother was. Her mother criticized everything she did, the way she did her hair, whether she brushed her teeth or everything, made fun of everything that she did that wasn't exactly like her mother. And so she thought her husband was doing the same thing, but he wasn't. She continues, how is this happening? She said, I changed my opinion of him from one comment you made to me. It's like we're looking at tapes of a football game afterward, and you're saying, okay, now here's how you could have done this differently. Yes, that's exactly what we do. And I do this with her all the time. I do it with people all over the world all the time. People write and say, my husband or my wife did this, and I'm so angry. And I say, no, you missed what was really happening in the tape. So let's look at the tape again, and we'll change our judgment, and then you'll change the way you feel and behave. She says, right here, look what he just did. Notice it, savor it. I feel like I'm being raised. And then she goes, ... which is actually called an ellipsis, from the dead. I'm seeing it. I have a guide. You've helped me learn how to live here. It's like you're introducing me to my husband for the first time. And I couldn't see him until I got a guide to translate, to somebody to look at the film together with me, to teach me. Oh, this just gets more fun all the time, doesn't it? Pretty much all the disagreements that I see between people are because they're not really paying attention, because they can't see their partner. And how could they? They're so afflicted with emptiness and pain that all they see is their own pain, and so they react to it all their lives, and they can't see anybody but themselves. Here's a Sylvie story. I've been pretty neglectful in this regard. In my defense, I sort of ran out of them, and I don't need a defense. I just wrote to Sylvie's mother and said, I'm out of Sylvie stories. So she gave me some more. At recess, her mother says, a friend of Sylvie's was chanting, Sylvie's afraid of heights. Sylvie's afraid of heights. You know how children do that? They don't say something once. They chant it. They sing it like a song, mocking the other person. Um, and at nighttime, Sylvie kept thinking about it, and it was keeping her from falling asleep. So we did some role playing on how she could react if this happens again. She could dance to the rhythm of the other girl's song. She could sing along with the song. She could walk away from the song. We went through lots of options, and we talked until we uncovered the lie that she was believing, which means what? Her mother helped her change her judgment. That's what all lies are, judgments, wrong judgments. That all the love that was available in that moment to Sylvie was from that one friend who was unable to give it. And Sylvie realized that that wasn't true. Her mom loves her. Her dad loves her. God loves her. Her brother loves her. Her little sister loves her. So what does it matter if one girl in the playground doesn't love her? Her mother says, we remembered all the people who love her, and she decided that she would think of those people when she's at school. She actually said that she would just pretend that if she was teased, she would pretend she was swinging at the park on Grandma Bear's lap. She said, what a tender, happy place that is for me. Oh, I mean, is that sweet? We can all, oddly, I didn't really do this on purpose, but we've been talking over and over again about what it takes to change our judgments and the effect that it has on us. So how do we do that? We find the love that we need. We trust the love that we get. We remember it, and then love becomes the primary truth instead of not loving, pain, regret, fear, anger, all those things. Love becomes the primary truth. And if the world really is a loving place because we have found people that we have gotten love from and we've trusted them and we remember it, those are truths. If we can remember that, our judgment changes to the world is a loving place. So now, instead of feeling fear, I feel peaceful. I feel hopeful. I feel, in fact, powerful. If I remember love enough, I become invincible. And then, if we take the fourth step and we share love, oh, then we float in the flow of love that fills the universe. And then there's like pretty much nothing we can't do. Life really works like that. I'll see you in a week.